Hey YouTube, how's it going? Just cooking my dinner right now, and I thought I'd give you guys a quick update. Couple exciting things to talk about, and yeah, I thought I'd show you what I'm cooking tonight for dinner because I think it's relevant to permaculture, and diet is one of the most important things that you can take responsibility for, and you can have a really big impact on the state of the planet, not just reducing your footprint, but actually optimizing it, making it positive. One of the things we say in all of our work is that it's not about being less bad, but being more good. And so most of us actually eat 3 meals a day. I don't. I eat 1 meal a day right now. I'm doing a bunch of intermittent fasting, and I'll do some videos on that in the future. But because I'm eating once a day, and even if I was eating 3 meals a day, I try and choose the best food that I possibly can. And so for me, that means that we grow a lot of it. So our garden is just going off the rocker right now. Lots of greens coming out. Squashes are all setting. We've got lots of garlic that's almost ready. It's really early this year. But one of the things that I'm really cautious about is making sure that I buy from farms that are definitely carbon negative in that they're sequestering carbon. They're ensuring that their practices are harvesting rainwater and recharging groundwater aquifers. That the animals have a humane life, and not just humane, but a fun and exciting life, and that they only have really one bad day in their entire life, and that's when it comes time to harvesting. And so my beef comes from a ranch up in the Peace Country. I've got a really great student up there. His name is Kurt Cowell, and I'll put his link to his farm in the show notes below. My pork comes from Dakota Coen or Coen Farm. I'll put his link in his show notes below. And then we usually raise some of our own chickens at a farm that we work on seasonally, which is fantastic. I mean, you just can't find chicken like that anywhere in the world. And so I'm really famous in my family for how I cook meat. I have a really simple process, and I'm going to share it with you tonight. And so tonight we're doing a pork roast from the Coen Farm. And the trick with cooking meat in a way that everybody will just love and will think that you're just an incredible chef, even though you just follow this really simple trick, is that I'll thaw the roast or the steak or the chicken. Doesn't really matter. I usually use the same process for all of the meat that I cook. And once it's thawed, I put an inordinate amount of salt on it, like more than you think you should. And it turns out, and we can maybe do this in another video coming up, that there's a lot of disinformation around salt. It's actually a lot of the stuff that you hear about is not actually true. And so most of us are actually salt deficient, especially if you're living on a hybrid ketogenic diet, which is what we loosely follow here in this house. So I put a lot of salt on it, and I'll actually let this salt soak into the meat for as long as I can. So up to 24 hours, sometimes just 4 hours. 12 hours is kind of a happy medium. And it changes the structure of the protein, and it will actually go right through the entire chop of meat, and it becomes amazing. And so tonight, because I don't want to heat the house up, I'm actually going to rotisserie it. Let's see if I can get a good shot of that. So we've got the rotisserie on. Typically, I'll just put it in the oven at about 425 degrees Fahrenheit for an hour until I get to the temperature internally that I want. And this just really preserves the flavor of the meat. It caramelizes the outside. And that salt just brings out the flavor. And I don't put a ton of spice onto it because I'm not trying to mask the flavor of the pork or the beef. And so if you haven't tried that, I highly recommend it. It'll totally change how you cook meat. I'm a really big fan of Coen Farms. Number one, I mean, Dakota's a good friend of mine and has become a good friend over the years. And I think that most of his customers would say that he's just so committed to the welfare of his animals and producing a product that's just second to none. But one of the things that Dakota does, which I think is unique in the farming community, is that he's had his meat tested. So he's actually putting his money where his mouth is. And so Dakota's pork has come out after being sent off to Ontario to a pretty well-known researcher out there. And they tested for a bunch of different metrics to see how healthy the animals were. which translates to healthy humans. And so his meat came out with an omega-3 to 6 ratio of something equivalent to seafood, which is crazy because if you think about it, most of us think that we have to eat a certain amount of fish per week. But we all know what's happening to our oceans. We have ocean dead zones. We have, depletion of our fish stocks because we're overfishing. And what this is proving is that we can actually grow anti-inflammatory proteins right in the prairies, which is just unbelievable. And so I buy a pig from him every year. I have to get it early because they're so popular, they sell out. And honestly, you've never had pork like Dakota's pork. They grow all of their own grain on the farm, and it's all organic. It's not certified, but there's no herbicides or pesticides or fertilizers going in there. All the fertility comes from their mixed farming approach. They're really leveraging off of Dakota's parents who've been farming for many generations. I mean, their generation plus many generations before them. And so it's almost second nature to them to grow like this. Their grain then gets fermented in milk because they've got a couple of dairy cows up there. And so those dairy cows produce milk, whatever they don't consume within their family. They don't sell the milk. They literally produce the milk mostly for their pigs. And so the dairy has probiotics in it, plus there's probiotics on the grains and the legumes. And in fact, I missed a step. They actually take the grains, the legumes and the barley, so the peas and the barley, and they'll blend it in a mix mill, which is just a giant Vitamix basically, with hay. And so these animals, his pigs, are getting up to 50 to 60% hay in their diet, just in the feed that they're getting fed every day. And so you've got this 50 or 60% organic hay that's grown on the farm mixed with organic barley and peas. And then they mix it in with raw milk, which ferments for 24 hours before it gets fed to the animals. And so the fermentation adds fat, which means that the fat-soluble vitamins that are in the hay and the grain and the legumes are available to the pigs. The fermentation breaks down the lectins, or the anti-nutrients that exist within those plant material. And then they're getting a combination of animal protein and plant protein, all with those probiotics. And honestly, if you've never gone to one of Dakota's farm tours, I highly recommend it. You will never see pigs in the kind of condition that his pigs are in. They're just incredible animals. It's so cool because the way that Dakota feeds these animals is actually changing the form of the animals. And so the genetics, generation after generation, is actually shifting as he continues to breed these animals. And he's actually starting to select now for animals that thrive on forage or grasses, which theoretically, if you look at the literature, should mean that the omega-6 to 3 ratio is only going to improve from here on in. So if you're on an anti-inflammatory diet, you're in CrossFit, you're working towards keto, or you're doing paleo diets, you're going to want to check out Coen Farms and what they're doing with their meat. They sell beef and pork, and maybe someday in the future they'll sell chickens and other farm products. But right now it's just beef and pork. And if you've never been on one of their farm tours, I highly recommend getting on their email list, signing up for their YouTube channel to get notified about what they're doing on the farm. Honestly, this is one of the most progressive permaculture farms in the entire province of Alberta. It's worth even traveling from the States to come up and see this. And you'll learn a ton from Dakota. It's funny because he's pretty young. I think he's 25 years old, but he's got the wisdom of a 40 or a 50-year-old. And it's funny because when I first met him, I met him on the phone. I had never seen his photo. And he's got a pretty deep voice, and I was like, oh, this guy's been around the block a little bit. He knows his stuff, and he speaks like a very mature person. And then you meet him, and it's like, oh my gosh, how young are you? But you only have to listen to him talk for about 2 or 3 minutes before you realize that this guy's probably lived a few lives, and is definitely carrying the wisdom of his parents in the way that he communicates and his knowledge about farming. So just a couple of quick announcements. So I'm going to be going on vacation, so the amount of content I'm going to produce over the next little while is going to be pretty spotty. I'll try and produce some videos while I'm on my canoe trip. I'm going to be taking my kids on a 5-day backcountry canoe trip in northern BC. Pretty excited about it. And And it's going to be an incredible journey, I'm sure, for my kids and for myself, so I'll try and document some of it on video. We've got some new content up on Medium. I recently have started putting blogs up there again, so you'll be checking that out. And it's going to be a great summer. I'm going to start producing some more videos now. I've got a little bit more free time. And so keep an eye on the YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed and you find these videos useful, by all means hit the subscribe button. We've also released our 60-page permaculture design notebook for free. So I'll put the link to that in the show notes below as well. Typically all of our PDC students get those before the PDC starts. PDC stands for Permaculture Design Course. But we've decided that the information in there is just so valuable that we want to share it with you guys. So go ahead and hit that link and sign up for it. Get that free note pack. I'll start doing some videos on that note pack coming up, and I'll take you through it one-on-one. And so, yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. And we will see you in about 7 days, and keep an eye out for new content. Okay, guys, have a great day. Talk to you soon.